Good morning. Welcome to Legal Straight Talk. It's another Saturday morning, and our host, obviously, is the Harrison Law Group. We're going to just recap what we had last week. Last week, we were talking about the fundamentals of a law firm and how a law firm should treat their clients and make sure that you're not treating them like they're a number and that you kind of get personal. And that's one of the things that the Harrison Law Group does. It gets very, very personal with their clients. And when you come into the Harrison Law Group or for anything, whether it's a will signing, whether it's a personal injury case, or a simple real estate case, you feel very much at home, and this is a very important thing. It's my pleasure to introduce to you right now Brett Harrison and Richard Coleman, the senior partners of the Harrison Law Group. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Good morning, Tom.
You know, we just want to back up, Brett, and maybe you can tell us a little, just recap a little from last week about how a client should feel when they actually come into a law firm. You know, it gets very nerve-wracking. Sometimes people are a little nervous. You know, when they get to the office, tell us how your firm actually treats them and what they can expect.
Well, that's a fair question, because let's be honest, most people, when they have to go to a lawyer, really dread it. It's equivalent to going to the dentist for many people. So they already go in with a bad thought about having to go to a law firm. And one of the first questions that people ask is, they say, how are you going to win my case? Do you guys win all your cases? And that's the point that really we discussed last week. Winning really is defined by the client's needs. What's a win for one client may be something different for another. And how we define winning and what our goals are for each client, I think, is what separates us as a law office.
Well, there's a huge difference between the word winning and settling. I know a lot of people have a misconception of that. The difference between winning a case and settling a case, can you explain the difference?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. But what I was going to say to you is, a lot of law firms, what they do is they send a secretary, a paralegal in to get the information from the client. They don't even meet the attorneys. And I think that's the first big mistake. And honestly, I really believe if you don't meet the attorney and sit down and spend some time with them, it's a real serious mistake. You ought to rethink about whether you should go to that law firm. Because I can tell you right now, we will win your case, because we're going to win you over by us taking the time to get to know you, what your needs are, whether it's, bottom line is, you got to take care of your family and your own needs, and everybody is different. The concept of a car accident case, it's all the same basically, but everybody's needs is what's different. And the lawyer's goal is to really listen and get to learn about you a little bit. Rich, I'll let you expand a little bit more. You and I were discussing this in the office, actually, on Friday.
The other day, I had met some clients that had been clients of the firm before, know them very well, handled a couple of cases for their family. And husband and wife came in. It was a serious injury, and we were sitting and we were talking with them, myself, the two of them, and the husband said something very interesting to me, and it made a lot of sense to them. That's why they were back. He said to me, you know, Rich, the reason why we're here is because you treat us like family, and we feel very comfortable here. We never have to worry about not having our questions answered. We feel very comfortable in your presence, coming to the office, the staff that you have. So from their point of view, they felt like family. And that is a very important concept from the client's point of view, because when a client comes into the office, whether it be the first time or coming back for another matter, they feel comfortable like family.
And then further, what's nice is that they generally get assigned, each client, new client gets assigned to a paralegal, whether, for example, they'll always have Tracy or Kim or whomever, or Denise, and they get to know that paralegal. So the paralegal's not guessing, who is this person? What number case are you? Let me look it up. They already know what to expect. They have a general dialogue with them.
You know, let me ask you a question, Brett. You know, I'm looking here at some of your pamphlets, and I know that last week we just skimmed the topic of personal injury, and I know that this week that's what we're going to be talking about. let's talk about a personal injury case. Let's talk about somebody who's involved in an average, everyday type of accident. And as we know on Long Island, statistically, they're telling us that there's about 400 accidents a day between Suffolk and Nassau County. Now, people, that may sound like a lot. We're talking about 400 accidents, whether it be a fender bender, somebody tapping the back of a car, or something catastrophic where you may have a rollover on the expressway or you're involved with a tractor trailer. When people are involved in accidents on Long Island, and as we all know, there is a ton of traffic out there, tell us, what should somebody do? The minute that accident happens, let's assume that they are coherent, they have an opportunity to get out of that car, get away from that car. What is the absolute first thing that they should do, Brad?
Well, in my opinion, like you said, first and foremost is safety. Make sure you're out of harm's way, whether you're now in incoming traffic coming at you, or in any way that if your lights are off, it's at night, you need to get out, be able to pull over safely. But secondly, once you collect your thoughts, I think you should also make sure whoever else is in the accident, whether you have passengers, that they're okay as well. But first and foremost, I think you should absolutely get a police report, because, things change when, all of a sudden an accident occurs, whether it's a pop in the rear, a left-hand turn case, a right-hand turn, stop sign, or what have you. You need to have the police there to memorialize
let me just interrupt you for a second. Who's calling the police? I mean, do you call the police? Do you have one of your passengers? If you have passengers, call the police. I know that in Long Island, and I have to say, there are a lot of great people on Long Island, and there are a lot of concerned people. I've never seen or been involved, first of all, I've never really been involved in a major accident, but I've seen my share of them, and it's amazing how the people of Long Island respond. They stop what they're doing. It doesn't matter if they're on their way to a wedding or whatever. They get out of the car and they assist. Do you have somebody else call the police department, or do you call the police? What would you recommend to that person involved in that accident?
I would do two things. If I were injured, or a passenger was injured, or another party in another car was injured, the first thing I would do was probably call the police and or ambulance at the same time, if you could. Call one and then the other, because obviously with health is the most important. After that, I think I would for sure want to get down the plate number of the other car, the type of car, the street where you're on, if you can, get the other person's information. But a lot of times, people become a little hostile. I mean, I've had it where I remember recently my wife was in an accident about a year or two ago, and the person rammed into her on the parkway, but I guess was in a rush, and started to approach her, started yelling. She called me immediately, and I said, keep the window closed, tell the gentleman to get back in his car, and the gentleman's yelling, I'm in a rush, I got to get out of here. All I told her is roll down your window 1/4 inch, tell him, please step away from my car, I've already called the police to come, and I'm sure they'll handle the facts of the accident.
Well, that's far and few between. I mean,
I think it's actually
like
more than you realize. People get angry when they're in an accident.
But let me ask you something. I know that the Harrison Law Group provides a pamphlet that goes in your glove compartment, and even if we can put the number up on the screen right now. We have pamphlets, or the Harrison Law Group has a pamphlet that just simply goes in your glove compartment, and on the back of that pamphlet, it has a step-by-step, I think about 10 major issues, things that you should do when you're involved in the accident. So if you want one of these pamphlets, please give us a call right now. We'll take down your name and number. We'll be more than happy to send it out to you. It's imperative that these things are in your glove compartment. It makes it simple, and just go through the list. Rich, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you're involved in an accident and you're in that car, whether you're hurt, you seem to be hurt, you don't know if you're hurt, because of course soft tissue in Long Island, we don't have a lot of major accidents. We have a majority of soft tissue, which in and of itself, we're going to get into the fundamentals of soft tissue in a little while, but should somebody go to a hospital for a matter of practicality just to make sure, based on a soft tissue injury, or not?
Yes, but before we get to that, I think just to seg back to what we were talking about at the scene of the accident, what's really important, and what you should realize, even though you're hurt, you're upset, is when you may speak to the other vehicle drivers or to the police. Let the police ask you the questions. The last thing you want to ever do is admit fault for the accident. And the reason why I say that is what may or may not have happened at the scene of the accident when a police officer writes down what you have to say and what the other driver has to say. Remember, it's a police officer interpreting what the parties are saying, and that could be misconstrued. So
that's true. And let me just back up for a second, and maybe you can highlight a little on this. Police officers that arrive on the scene do not witness the accident. So therefore, if the information on that police report is incorrect or interpreted incorrectly, this could affect not only your right to compensate monetarily, but it also can affect the value of having your vehicle repaired at the cost of the individual who may or may not have caused the accident. Am I correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So if that vehicle, let's assume for a minute that is interpreted incorrectly, and you are 100% right in this particular situation, your value of what that vehicle is fixed at, let's assume it's 100%. If it's interpreted incorrectly, they may only give you 80%, which means that you have two choices. You can either go under your own insurance company,
if you have
which
collision
you then
coverage.
Put a mark, so to speak, against your carrier or not. So let's highlight a little on that. Giving information based on property damage issues as well as percentages of what it could cost.
Taking a step back, it's also important that if there are witnesses at the scene, you get their name, their phone number, and I honestly would even take their plate number just in case you wrote something down wrong in a hurry. Because honestly, you don't know if the police officers will be there in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, and not everybody can wait. So you're losing a valuable witness, an actual eyewitness, who can then say, hey, wait a second, I don't know driver 1 or driver 2. I saw what happened. This person went through the red light. This person was speeding. This, for whatever it may be. And that could really be the key factor in this. And you want to be able to have that information and secure it. So that's really key. Also, I would also recommend, and now everybody has cell phones with cameras, I would recommend that they also maybe take pictures of the damage to your vehicle and to the others, because a lot of times we may have to hire an accident reconstructionist, and he can look at the damage to cars and say, wait a second, there's only one way this could have happened. And we'll get into that at another time, but I'd also maybe take pictures of the intersection. Maybe there was construction going on. Maybe there's another party you're not realizing should be involved. That was a partial cause. So really securing that evidence, that's really, really important. And I'm not saying officers don't do that, but a lot of times they're focused on, the safety of people, getting the information. Maybe they get another call that's an emergency. They might not have time to get all that information. So when you get a police report, you say, wait a second. It says witnesses, and it doesn't have anybody, and I know there were 3 witnesses.
Right.
And you have them. That's where it's important, because a lot of times, and Rich will be the first to tell you, we go through this all the time, the story changes once the person speaks and has time, and they speak to their insurance company. All of a sudden, the insurance company tells us, well, that's not how we have it. We have it that your client was going 190 miles an hour and blew the stop sign and hit us, and hit our car. And you're like, wait a second, where did that come out of?
Well, this is true. And understand something. What Brett Harrison is saying right now, this is if you feel that you have the capabilities of doing this. Before we go to commercial, just recapping real quick, if you are hurt and you have any pain at all, whether it be neck, back, shoulders, whatever it may be, do not get out of that vehicle until an ambulance arrives. This is imperative. You may cause additional damage. What we're saying here is that if you're in that accident, by taking pictures, writing down information, this is if you are capable of doing this. If you feel the slightest bit of pain and you are out of harm's way and you're able to remain in that vehicle, you do so. You don't get out of that car until an ambulance or law enforcement personnel arrive. You're listening to Legal Straight Talk here on MadHouse TV. We're going to go to commercial. When we come back, we're going to go a little deeper into what you should and should not do when involved in an accident here on Long Island. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to Formula Auto Wash, where every day is a great day for a car wash. Open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Sundays 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Detailing packages for every budget, starting out at $29.99. 100% hand wash and detail centre. Hogshair and microfiber brushes and mitts. Proudly using Ecolab Blue Coral soaps and waxes. Formula Auto Wash has served the community for over 30 years. Senior discounts all day, every day. Ladies' Day Wednesday, $3 off any wash. Early bird discount Monday through Thursday till 9:30 a.m. Check out our website, formulaautowash.com.
Hi, this is Mickey B. Join me for my Saturday Night Disco Fever Dance Party Volume 2, Saturday, October 6th, 8 p.m. at the Memorare Ballroom, 2183A Jackson Avenue, Seaford. Starring live Alicia, Barbara Roy, former lead singer of Ecstasy, Passion and Pain, the Trick Shot Disco Orchestra, and DJ Ace playing all your favorite hits of the 70s. 5-hour disco party, full hot buffet, cash bar. For tickets and information, call 516-822-9612, 516-822-9612, or MickeyB.com. Sponsored by...
Welcome back to Legal Straight Talk. I'm Tom Mealy. We're here with the Harrison Law Group located in Massapequa, New York. And we were talking about what people should and should not do the minute they're involved in an accident. We're going to continue with this topic. Rich, when we were talking about witnesses and what people shouldn't do and should not do, can we just highlight a little bit more on that when you have that accident, when that accident occurs?
Sure. As Brett mentioned, getting witness names, addresses, identification, if possible, is critical to the case, because sometimes the police officers, their interest is different and they may not write down the name of a witness or identify the witness at the scene. So if you're able to, or your passenger is able to, or your occupants in the vehicle can, getting that information is crucial. Why? I think it's common sense that at some future point, if you're going to be bringing your case to an attorney and the witnesses are helpful to indicate what happened, verify what the facts are in the case, substantiate what you're telling the lawyer happened, critical to the case is a non-party witness, someone who has no interest in the case, just saw what happened, is not involved at all.
That's as opposed to a lot of times we'll say, hey, we have a witness. They were in the car. They were the passenger. The first thing the insurance companies say is, oh, well, that's a
Yeah,
biased witness.
right, you're
Come
your
on, that's your
passenger.
friend, that's your mother, that's your sister.
Correct.
And then we always say, well, who should we have in our car? A stranger?
That's
You know,
correct.
so when you say, but we have an objective witness who had no interest, that holds a lot more weight.
In addition, when you do come to the law office and you have that information, it gives us the chance to either contact the witness. We have private investigators that we utilize to get information, particularly get witness statements. That gives us the opportunity then to give the private investigator who will hire for your case to go out and speak to the witness and, if possible, obtain a recorded or signed statement from that witness validating what occurred, memorializing what occurred in writing, and where they sign their name. If the case then goes to trial, we then have a signed statement from a witness. Later on, sometimes the witness may have forgotten 2 or 3 years later what the specific facts are. So as early in time as possible, getting that witness information to the attorney that you obtain from the scene is very critical.
Rich, why don't you explain a little more about why it's so critical to be the first to get the statement, and explain what we've experienced with regards to insurance companies. Whoever gets to the witness first, generally, it's obviously most helpful.
Well, sure. As soon as the claim is reported by the other driver who may have caused the accident or contributed to the accident, they're going to also contact their insurance company to advise them that they had an accident and provide any information that they can to the insurance company. And of course, the insurance company has an obligation and responsibility to defend the interests and investigate the accident on behalf of their insured. So they're going to send out their private investigators, or they're going to contact the witness as soon as possible to find out what that witness has to say. So in that regard, whoever contacts the witness first is in a better position to understand and get the information from the witness accurately, correctly. Because if the insurance company and their investigator speaks to the witness, remember how they ask the question, how they put the question, what information they may leave out in asking the witness kind of shapes how that witness statement comes out. So absolutely, whoever gets to speak to the witness first it's critical to the case.
That, and then one other thing I was just thinking about while we went to commercial break was another reason it's very important to contact the police is under New York State, generally, if you're going to claim injuries, or whether it be you just want your medicals paid, your property damage, a lot of times your insurance company is going to tell you, well, do you have a police report? Do you have proof that there was an accident? You know, that's one thing. Then the next important thing is I would never want to rely on the other side, the defendant in this case, or the other person that you got into an accident with, to report the accident to their insurance company. You know, that's the other aspect. You want to also report it within 24 hours to your insurance company right away, because there are time limitations. And we can get into that another time, but understand that you have obligations with your insurance company, and that's very, very important.
That's absolutely correct, Brett. Even if you're not at fault, you don't believe you're at fault, contacting your insurance company for your vehicle is critical. There are time limitations, particularly with no fault, and advising the insurance company of what occurred, your insurance company, is critical. Now, when I say that, this is really, really very important. You, under your automobile insurance policy, have certain obligations to your insurance company. What I mean by that is, other than reporting it, you must cooperate with your insurance company. So if they contact you, an adjuster contacts you and says, look, we need to obtain a statement from you, you must do that. You must comply with your insurance company's request. But what you don't have to do, and we always tell clients when they come in and they advise, well, the other insurance company has contacted for the other car, and they want to take a statement from me. They want to take a recorded statement from me. My advice to the client is you're under no legal obligation, none whatsoever.
But then a lot of times clients tell us, well, why shouldn't I? I have nothing to hide. I didn't do anything wrong. And that's where they're wrong.
Okay. The client has no legal obligation whatsoever to speak to any of the other insurance companies for other vehicles that were involved in the case. None whatsoever.
We're gonna, we've got about a few minutes left here. I want to get into, I'm reading through one of your pamphlets, and it says here that it talks about soft tissue injury. A lot of people don't understand what soft tissue injury is, other than what I guess there's a fracture is not considered a soft tissue injury, even though you can sustain soft tissue injuries with a fracture.
I think you should be clear, though, Tom, when you discuss soft tissue, that's really a terminology that the insurance companies use to try to lessen the blow, saying you're not really injured, you have soft tissue.
That's correct.
So, and I don't ever ascribe to calling it soft tissue.
But there's a difference between tissue and ligament damage, which is considered, as far as the insurance company is concerned, soft tissue. So when you say the word soft tissue injury, let's just highlight a little bit more of the difference between tissue, ligament issues, things that cannot be seen through an X-ray, and I think that's where they differentiate.
Well, why don't we take it out of the medical terms?
All right, so let's say we have, instead of that, a fracture, where you can see a fracture on an X-ray, you cannot see a torn ligament on an X-ray.
All right, let's even take it a step further. When you get into an accident, some people say, I broke my arm, I broke my leg, I fractured my wrist. And then they know right away, I do have an injury. Or they have a deep gash in their leg or their arm. But then there are other injuries that there's no fracture, there's no obvious outward sign of an injury, bone coming through the skin or anything like that, or a gash in the head. They say, you know what? I don't know what's the matter with me. I wake up, I feel like I'm 105 years old, I can barely move my neck. When I lift my neck up, all of a sudden I get dizzy, or I have tingling down my hands, wrist. I never had these symptoms. I can't even grip a cup without it hurting. When I go up the stairs, my knees are hurting, and I didn't break anything. And these are what I call things that make you go, You say to yourself, what the heck is the matter with me? So you go. This usually occurs within the first 24 to 48 hours after an accident. We commonly hear the same thing. When I got in the accident, the adrenaline, I got up, I was happy to feel that I was able to move and I could move my limbs. But the next day, I felt like a ton of bricks hit me. And then people commonly say, I took a hot shower. I usually take a 5-minute shower, a 10-minute. I took like a 40-minute shower, and it felt a little bit better. But then I was tired. I couldn't focus. There's so many different variations of that. And, so that's why I get annoyed when I hear an adjuster or an insurance company say, oh, it's soft tissue. Well,
right, so let's say that, let's use their term for a time being, because I know that in your advertisement you speak about soft tissue injury. So soft tissue injury, so that the audience understands, is we're referring to something that happens within the body that's outside the scope of a fracture. So, or a gash, or a laceration, or a missing body part. It has to do with, either a disc or ligaments or tendon tears.
Or a body function.
But this is what we're talking about when we refer to soft tissue. Now, I know that with the insurance company, under New York state law, they have something called a threshold law, which kind of feeds into the difference between so-called soft tissue and a fracture, or something that's very visible.
Why don't we let Rich go? Rich is the
so
threshold injury maven.
Rich, give us an idea.
Sure.
The difference between, or what threshold means in New York State, and understanding that we have the burden of proof as a plaintiff's firm to actually prove the case for soft tissue, unlike something like a fracture where it becomes visible. Well, can you explain that a little bit?
But before I let Rich get in, I know I'm interrupting Rich again, but understand why the term threshold came about. There were so many injuries. people making claims that the courts and the insurance company had to come up with we call it the litmus test. I'll call it. You got to meet a certain threshold level of injury. We're not just going to accept a hangnail. We're not just going to accept somebody stubbed their toe, or they spent $500 for medical bills. Therefore, you make threshold. Rich, I'll let you go first.
Sure. When I started practicing a while ago, when someone had a motor vehicle accident and they were injured, at that time, the threshold, in what I mean threshold and what we're referring to is the legal litmus test that you must satisfy as an injured claimant to bring a case. At that time, all you needed was $500 in medical bills. Obviously, there were many, many, many claims that were brought, and after legislation from the insurance companies pushing that test changed. So we now, in New York State, have to function with what's called this quote-unquote serious injury threshold. And what that means is, in order for a claimant, when I say claimant, an injured party, the plaintiff, the person that comes into our office after a car accident, this only applies to motor vehicle accidents, not trip and falls or slip and falls or dog bites. When they come into our office, what becomes critical to the success of a case is whether or not they have or do not have, quote unquote, a serious injury. The serious injury test is defined in the New York State insurance law. Clearly, as we've been talking about, there's certain given injuries that qualify and enable you to make that claim and satisfy the law. A fracture, what's called a significant cosmetic disfigurement, a scar or prominent mark that on your face or part of your body that is significant. There are other tests in that serious injury law, but what we see quite often are what we've been talking about as soft tissue injuries that many times are worse than or more disabling than a fracture or a scar.
Long-lasting, permanent?
Permanent. What is involved in quantifying and proving that you have met that serious injury threshold when you have a soft tissue injury is really dependent upon your medical documentation based upon your treating doctors and healthcare providers.
Okay, now I just want to just interrupt you for a second with threshold. Since we do represent a lot of motorcycle and a huge part of the motorcycle community on Long Island, there is no threshold requirement
That's
on
correct,
a motorcycle.
Yeah,
Can you highlight just a little bit on that?
Yeah, and the reason why it's exempt is if someone, whether you're driving the motorcycle or you're an occupant on the motorcycle and you have an accident, you do not have to satisfy the serious injury law. And the reason being is you're covered under no-fault laws for your injuries, which means that unlike a car, if you're injured in a car, your medical bills will typically be paid for and other expenses, loss of earnings by your insurance company under the no-fault law.
And that's regardless of fault. That's why it's no fault.
Correct.
Whether you caused the accident or not, if you're injured, then the host vehicle, the car that you're in, will cover your medical and out-of-pocket expenses, but not on a motorcycle.
Unless you're a pedestrian. If a motorcycle driver hits a pedestrian and the pedestrian is injured under those limited circumstances, the insurance policy for the motorcycle will only then provide no-fault benefits to the pedestrian. Just one thing, and this is really, really important because we're talking a little bit about no-fault. We all assume that if you're injured in an accident and you're hurt, of course your no-fault insurance company, a proper notice, forms are going to take care of your medical bills, hospital bills, medical providers, loss of earnings if you do have it, substantiated. But one thing that you must know, if you're drinking and driving and you are injured due in part to your intoxication or your impairment, your no-fault carrier will deny payment of your medical bills.
Rich,
and
we
all of
have
your
about we have about 5 minutes left
Sure.
here, and I know that when working in the area of law for as many years as I have, people have a total misconception of what the word no fault means. And let me just, people think that no fault means that you're not at fault, they're not at fault. I know that the word no fault is very confusing. No fault is your medical aspect of your policy, meaning that the insurance company, your insurance company, will pay your medicals whether it was your fault or their fault, excluding the provision of intoxication. Can you just, for the next couple of minutes, just highlight a little
Sure.
bit on what no fault means to clarify that it has nothing to do with liability?
In New York State.
It has to do with your medical.
That's correct.
And also I would talk about in a car accident, even if you have your own personal health insurance, no fault is primary in a car accident.
Right. If you're involved in a motor vehicle accident in New York State, what do I mean by involved? You're a driver. You're an occupant. If you are a pedestrian struck by a vehicle,
A bicyclist.
a bicyclist, a pedestrian, a skateboarder, what happens there is the insurance company for the motor vehicle that either caused the injury or in which you are an occupant or a driver, there is coverage, statutory coverage under that policy, which you must have in New York State if you drive a car. You have to have insurance, mandatory insurance. That insurance policy provides coverage called no-fault coverage. What it means is whether you caused the accident or you didn't cause the accident, your insurance company has a legal obligation to provide medical benefits, payment of loss of earnings, payment of bills that you receive from medical providers for you, for an occupant in the vehicle, or if you strike a pedestrian, a bicyclist, that individual or individuals also will have coverage under your policy. So, again, it's not dependent upon fault, and the medical bills and other bills that you incur from that accident will be paid for by your insurance company.
Also, interestingly enough, a case recently came into the office where a person was sitting at a Dunkin' Donuts, and the car went smashing through the glass, and our client was injured. He had multiple injuries, fractures, and so forth. That person also was covered by the car under no-fault insurance.
That's correct, Brett. Now, what's interesting, a lot of people may or may not realize that illustration, when that gentleman was sitting having a cup of coffee, the last thing on his mind was getting hit by a car going through the glass window, throwing him into the wall across the way, is that, yes, he is covered under the no-fault policy for the car that hit him, plus he has a liability claim for his pain and suffering against the same insurance company that's also providing the no-fault.
We're going to get into liability in our next segment next week. We're going to wrap up. It's you've been listening to Legal Straight Talk here, the Harrison Law Group. I just want to just remind people, because I know that a lot of people out of the state of New York, are watching this, and laws change from different states to different states. What I can tell you, though, is if you are involved in a motorcycle accident, a motor vehicle accident, a boating accident, I don't care whether you're in Long Island to Los Angeles, what you have to do is you have to find a law firm that knows what they're doing. Everybody wants to do personal injury law firm because at the end of the day, the insurance company is going to pay out, if you warrant, compensation, and could be serious compensation for that injury sustained. You have to understand that if you go to a law firm, and I'm not demeaning a law firm by any means, but if that lawyer is a real estate attorney, and even though the filling out the forms are not a difficult thing, and he doesn't understand the fundamentals of injuries, soft tissue fractures, or whatever the case may be, you have to be very, very careful. So what I'm going to say is this.
But Tom, I would stop you on one part of it, which is filling out forms is critical, because that's why a lot of times we, with the client, fill out the form.
Well, I'm not
you
just
check the
saying,
wrong box on a no-fault application
but I'm
and
not
say you were
saying
working,
that.
Tom. now it's a workers' comp, and now we're at a whole different level.
Yes, but what I'm trying to
That's why it
say
is
here
important.
is that be careful. So if you are in Los Angeles, or whether you're in Long Island, and Texas up to Michigan, if you've been involved in an accident and you are not quite sure what you need to do, you can give us a call down here at the Harrison Law Group. We will find and help you find an attorney that is suitable in whatever state in the United States that you're in, and we'll make sure that that law firm understands every aspect of personal injury law and can do the job the way the job needs to be done. We're gonna stop here. I want to thank Brett and Rich. This is segment 2 of the Legal Straight Talk with the Harrison Law Group. We will be here next Saturday at 9 o'clock, and I think at that point we're going to start highlighting a little bit more on injuries, what values of injuries could be depending on where you're located, and just continue with the series. So it's been a pleasure, Brett, Rich. Thanks very much for being in here today. And again, you've been watching Legal Straight Talk here on MadHouse TV. We'll see you next Saturday morning, 9 o'clock.
And Tom, this is Brett Harrison from the Harrison Law Group, and I approve this show. How about you, Rich?
Always approve the show.
Have a
Tom?
good night, good weekend. We'll see you next Saturday morning. Take care.
Take care.